Greetings, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Dreamscapes. Today we have our friend, just a random person like you. This is Math Dad Wizard from another Discord I'm in, and he's out in the middle of nowhere, USA, with Courage the Cowardly Dog. We're going to get right back to him in 2 seconds. Would you kindly please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. Visit BenjaminTheDreamWizard.com, where you can get downloadable MP3 versions of this to take with you to the gym on your daily walks, whatever you do. You know, while you're doing things with your hands, you can listen to me. You can put me in your ears. Also, on that web, BenjaminTheDreamWizard.com, you can find all currently available 15, hopefully by the time this drops, 16 available works of historical dream literature. I'm not going to mention book 15 anymore because I usually pop that up on the screen, but book 16 hopefully will be right here. We'll see what I can do. That's enough about me. Whatever. Let's get back to talking to our friend. Hey, I just wanted to say, for the audience's sake, thank you for being patient for like an hour of audio testing. That was ridiculous. I can't believe we had to do that.
No worries whatsoever. Like I said, I've been working on doing my own video stuff, and audio is like the worst because you have to fiddle with it for hours to get it just right. Yeah, no, and my biggest thing is like, I'll listen to anything. I want it to be a good experience. I want you to sound good as the guest, and I want it to be a good experience for the listener. But I also need to dial it in on my end so I can make tweaks, because your microphone's going to be different than the next guy's, going to be different than the next gal. Yeah. And that's, so it's, I've needed to really work on that. You were a huge help today, finding some basic errors. Like I wasn't ducking my own audio input when capturing you. I didn't know there was a new beta audio output capture that would grab the application. I use Discord. So if people want to join me, just, reach out across a variety of social media, say, hey, I want to jump into your Discord. I'll give it to you, and we'll make an episode. It's real easy. I'll talk to anybody. You don't have to be famous. You don't have to be a podcaster or have a book you're selling. I'll do all that for you. So, okay. I was going to start with the idea, and I was going to ask you about this, but I thought we'll save it for the show. I am the Dream Wizard. You are the Math Wizard. I have a different word for that. I call you guys Mathemagicians. Mathemagicians, yeah. That's a fun one. I remember when I was teaching one of my first classes, one of my students, they gave me a gift. It was a Yu-Gi-Oh card, the Mathemagician, the card.
Oh, hell yeah.
I still have that card. It was a blast. I was very happy about that.
Oh yeah, that is in my mind a magic talisman. Absolutely, it represents someone's positive thoughts towards you. It's just why we say tokens. I mean, they mean more than the object. This particular person thought of me in a particular way that aligns with somewhat of what I see in myself, and
how they perceive me.
Yes, and that aligns all together, and then you've got a physical, and you can put it on display. And every time you look at that, you get a boost of. Yep. Positive feeling about a past event and an extra validation of, that you did something right. You made an impression on someone. You did some good in the world, Right.
Well, I have this theory that sometimes people project their emotions onto objects. Like even if it's not like, spiritual or whatever, they'll just take objects because they remind them of those things. It's just a physical memory trigger. Yeah. So if they come back to it, it just triggers that part in their brain, and they're like, oh, I remember these emotions, and I can experience them again. And so people like doing that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's very much a thing. And I talk a lot about magic in a way that is both spiritual and practical. The most recent episode called Practical Magic, because this gal was talking about how she approaches making positive change in the world in a way, if I had to characterize it. So, and I very often say there's a magic in the gap between building knowledge and the sudden apprehension, the understanding of an idea. There's a moment before you understand it, and there's a moment of understanding that goes forward. Something happens between those two that we don't know what it is. I call that magic, and
it's, if I may, from just an educational standpoint. Sure. So I'm probably not going to remember the technical terms for it. My education professor's probably groaning at me right now, but it's something along the lines of it changing from external information to internalized information.
Yeah.
The idea of it just being a tool that exists that I can use towards, this information is actually important and I can understand it in a way that's intuitive for me. I want to say there's some theory of education. I want to say it's like a Russian teacher or something like that developed it, but it was something along the lines of like areas of competence. where as people slowly become more confident and capable with the material, they start to view it more positively, because now it's not just some information in a book somewhere. It's like, oh, that's information I can understand and use. So if I approach another topic that uses that, suddenly, what used to be something they were incompetent with becomes something they were competent with. And humans love achieving and exploring new things where they feel they can succeed. So getting people to move along that scale, to move in different directions towards new competencies, it's like you're saying, it's like magic, just watching them slowly grow over time.
Absolutely. And there's also a magic to the understanding and emotional impact, the concept of meaning that we assign to objects. We assign it in some ways, and we also discover it. I have a broader theory of the world where I don't think there is any such thing as an invention, so to speak. Invention is what we term it when someone discovers a way to apply something that was already possible. So in some ways, it's a tautological argument of invention versus discovery. I think everything is discovery. Like the wheel, the concept of the wheel, the function of the wheel, the form of all the different possible wheels, that existed before we understood it. We evolved the capacity to see the form that could exist in the world. It's like we can't imagine anything that is impossible to exist.
Right.
Even the idea of a unicorn, we could say genetically engineer a horse to grow a bone out of its head. We could actually do that. It's possible.
It's possible to do that.
Yeah, so technically anything you can imagine is kind of possible, even though if we don't know how to do it. Go ahead.
Well, from a humble math guy's perspective, I mean, that people have that sort of conversation all the time, the argument of whether math is invented or discovered. And the conclusion that winds up coming to the end of this after 95% of the knockdown drag out is what we are describing was always there. Like the patterns existed, we just either didn't notice them or we didn't think to categorize them in certain ways before. But the symbols that we use to actually do the describing, so the addition sign was not a thing that I think existed naturally, but the concept of addition was something that was always there.
Yes. Well, that's a very powerful concept too, is that, and that goes to memes, the broader concept of memes. I think math, language, all language is mimetic. Yeah. It's we have a concept and we put a mouth, a sound to the object, to the symbol. We assign it a symbol, verbal, visual. I don't know if that's where you were going with that.
So, something along those lines. It's just, it's funny how many ideas mathematicians have almost kind of stumbled into because they start writing it down and then they try to do something with it that, they thought these two ideas don't go together, and then they try it and actually works. Imaginary numbers and complex numbers are in math, those are the key example. So to the average person, a number represents a quantity, right? And a negative number represents a lack of quantity. So if someone hears $5 and negative $3, they think, oh, okay, so I have $5, I owe someone $3, so realistically I have $2 overall. And so there's this other idea, though, of square roots, which is, a number times itself gives you another number. But that doesn't really work with negatives in the same way, because a negative times a negative is a positive, right? But there is a number that if you multiply it by itself, you get a negative number. It's called I. And the reason it's called I is because the people who discovered it, they were like, yeah, no, there's no way that can exist. That doesn't, it fits outside of the framework of what we understand. And so they were just like, we'll just call it I. We'll square it and make it -1 later. And then later on, in things like quantum physics, where it's a very different approach to how reality works, they found that I is supremely useful in that field of physics, because it was just further outside their framework than they understood at the time. So it's so the concept was there, and they even recognized that there was a concept there. They just didn't recognize that they didn't understand it.
Yeah, and a lot of this comes down to teleology, I guess, people's religious, quasi-religious faith in how the universe functions. So I suppose my base assumption, based on what? I don't know. It makes sense to me. I think it can be logically proved, but you've seen some of the debates in the Discord where I'm like, here's an idea, and people go, that's dumb, that's wrong. And I'm like, but it seems obvious to me. Long story short,
right? You got to start somewhere and then build from there. Yeah.
You do. Well, and then, okay, pause, and then I'll come back to that. There's a show I used to listen to. It was broadcast, a weekly show on, I think, NPR out of Stanford University, where it was Philosophy Talk. That's the name of the show, Philosophy. I don't know if they're still doing it. I stopped listening a few years ago, got into other things. Right. They always, in their philosophy department, it was one of their rituals. And we were talking about the Yu-Gi-Oh card and the power we invest in objects, symbolic, and rituals are symbols of things as well. Wow, I'm going all over the place. This is you triggered my Aspie brain.
It's okay.
Okay, long story short, symbols, philosophy talk. Fuck. Oh, no. Don't lose it. It was great. Rituals. Symbols. Fuck me. I went too far. Rebounded out.
It's okay.
Oh, their ritual, Jesus, was they would always say the phrase, a person would make an assertion because we have to start somewhere. And they would say, thank you for asserting. Because you got to recognize we can't have a discussion unless someone says, what if this? Starting point. Thank you for making a proposal. A lot of people in debates get down to, I don't like that idea. It's opposite or what I believe. I think it's inherently false, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And they latch right onto that and skip over the part where it's like, thank you for giving us somewhere to start. Now I think you're wrong, and let me tell you why. But they jump straight to it. Yeah. And that's, well, you see me in the debate stuff, and I'm not a debate bro. I mean, I don't do this verbally well. I can share ideas, but if you're gonna challenge me to do so, I gotta like when I do the dream thing, I gotta write it all down, and then we go through it piece by piece. Imagine me. This is why I gotta do it in text version, because I got to write out my thoughts. I got to stop and think, number one, I got to stop and think before I write. Then I got to edit my writing and say, does that say what I think it says? Okay, those are the wrong words. It'll be 5 minutes composing a 3-sentence paragraph because I really need to think about it. And I need to go back and read what other people read. And like, do I get that correctly? Wait, do I need to ask a clarifying question? I can't do any of this verbally. I just can't. That's not where my skill set is.
You got to analyze your points and write them out in a way that's consistent with what you're thinking, and that's hard.
Yeah, well, for to make sure it's relevant to what they were asserting, to make sure it's clear to me, to make sure I'm expressing it. And I've said this before. There's like 4 chances for everything to go horribly wrong, and more than that, but 4 basic chances. Yeah. What I think, how I say it, how they hear it, and how they process it. At minimum 4 chances for everything to go wrong if you are being as clear as you possibly can be. And if you're not, then it all goes to shit. And that's, I mean, I'm amazed. We're what is it? Joe Rogan had a thing where he's like, we're monkeys who make sounds with our mouth and communicate telepathically. I can put my thoughts into your head. It's like, whoa. Yeah, we're making these vibrations in a physical substance that vibrate something in your head, and it gets turned into electrical signals that become thoughts. It's like, what if that's not magic? I don't know what the hell magic is. Right?
Yeah, it's one of those things where part of it probably occurred naturally because sound is just something that animals make when they're moving about in the world. So being able to detect sound is important. And then once you develop a species that can differentiate sounds to the point of very specific tiny syllables, it's like they're absolutely gonna utilize that to communicate. And now we have language, even though there are languages all over the world and they sound completely different. They're all built on this base idea of I make noise, you know what I'm thinking.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and it's fascinating too. There's a reason I'm a little bit obsessed with Greek and Latin roots, because if you go back, a lot of these words that we use are composed of multiple other words strung together that give us a more complex idea. It's kind of building a brick wall, one brick at a time. But if you go back and you look at some of those roots, they are single syllable roots that each express their own idea. So you have, modifier of idea, compressed, and then we go, okay, now we need a dictionary definition of multiple words that aren't the same words, because you can't describe a word by using the word itself, which a lot of people don't realize today. That's a whole nother dispute.
Well, I actually, for the purposes of a fantasy novel I was working on a couple of years ago, I tried making my own language just out of curiosity.
Tolkien-esque, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't going to go that far. I was like, okay, just what would it look like, and what would it be like to write a sentence in this language? Like, that was a key part of the scene. Was what does it feel like to write this language?
How to conjugate the syntax, etc.
Yeah. And so basically what I wound up doing was I was like, okay, I want it to be like a pictorial language. So, it's the symbols each have their own meaning. When you combine them, the combined meaning creates a new word, that sort of thing. And basically what I wound up doing was like, it just turns into not quite Egyptian hieroglyphs. I don't know how familiar are you with Japanese kanji?
Yeah.
So like it was basically like that, but it had the Korean structure of basically the way you stack them makes it so it's just more of the symbols. It's just more of the symbols as you go.
Gotcha.
And so I wondered, I was like, how many of those do you need to actually make a language that functions? And I was able to get a lot out of just 6 small symbols.
Cool.
And just the order of their importance. So that it was
nice.
It was a weird exercise, but it was fun.
Oh yeah. Well, I've described memes as the framework upon which we hang upon which what is it? Fuck, how did I say that? Memes are the framework upon which our perception of reality hangs. If that makes sense. Someone might have to sit and meditate on that a little bit. That makes sense to me. Yeah. But and it's also funny because we got the symbol A, the symbol B, the symbol C, and you put them together in a row, and you've got the beginning of the alphabet, but you've also got the ABCs. We move up a level, and it's like, now this is the basics. What is as basic as what? The building blocks of language itself. Yep. And so I've got the ABCs of dream interpretation, and that's one on my clip channel here, and also under which I release my books. And for me, the ABC stands for augury, bibliomancy, and chaos. So we've gone from the basic symbols of an alphabetic structure to the concept of the basic building blocks of something as a broader concept. Yeah. And then I refine it back down and say, well, here's the specific type of ABCs, but what it's doing is referencing the meta narrative of the basic building. Well, here's the basic building blocks of dream interpretation. Here's the concepts I use and identify. It becomes this beautiful tapestry of interreferential multi-level analysis.
Right. Same ideas, different spin. Same ideas people already know access in a way that leads them to new information.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love that stuff. I love feeling clever, whether anyone else agrees. I just enjoy the feeling. So that's why I try and come up with interesting titles. A lot of these titles for the shows it's going to reference one thing as a pop culture phenomenon or as a literary reference or philosophical, but it's also going to have a double meaning if I can at all accomplish that. And it's also going to, specifically reference something the dreamer was experiencing in the dream as it relates to that. So almost every single one of my titles, you can find a double meaning in it. And I've spent up to 2 hours looking for a decent title, and it just stops my whole process. I'm so obsessive about it.
Well, I just thought of this as we were talking. Yeah. Could I field your potential title for this one, maybe?
Yes. Can you tell me after we analyze? After we analyze, because I don't want to. Okay. So another thing about my process, and we're going to get into it right away because you're running out of time, and we already talked. I have a feeling I could talk to you for an hour, and we wouldn't run out of things to say. What I do, and for the audience, so I don't want to hear your dream until right now, until we're sitting here together. I will overthink it. I will dream about it. I will bring my own assumptions. I will start building my own understanding of it, independent of the ability to have a direct feedback immediately from you before my ideas start taking over. So there's something about this that has to be a spontaneous, collaborative, interactive moment where we build the meaning together. I am, as I've said to folks, the way I phrase it is, none of these answers are in me. They're all in you. And all I'm doing is poking around the edges and shining a flashlight in the dark, trying to help you see what you've already seen from as many different angles as possible as may be relevant. So so definitely so people have tried to say, here's my dream. They put it in text and send it to me. I'm like, well, I can read it and I can start having my own ideas, but this back and forth, I cannot do it in text. It's just not possible. Anyway, well, you're here, so I'm not trying to talk you into it. But explain to people why they can't just send me their dream. You can't send me your dream and ask for an interpretation on Twitter. It's not going to happen. I just can't do it. But also, don't tell me your dream. Just say, I have a dream. Good enough. I'll talk to anybody about anything. So they're all infinitely fascinating to me, the problem puzzle solving aspect of it. And this girl's she's rubbing on my, okay, we got to do this. I love you. Go. It's my compressed air. She's got to go away. She's going to lay on the keyboard. She's going to ruin everything. Speaking of which, you're limited on time. We're talking about dreams. You ready to do the thing?
I am. So do I just start?
Yeah. So basic process. Maybe I haven't done this in a while. I can explain, or maybe I do it every time and I forget. I shut up and listen. You tell me the dream beginning to end, like a story. Whatever you can remember. Don't worry about it. Anything is good enough. Then we go back through it again. Do a little bit of a deep dive. Try and put me looking through your eyes as much as possible. And then somewhere between, phase 2 and phase 3, we start putting together what makes sense, what feels relevant to you. You'll get a kind of visceral zing. You'll have aha moments. That magic will happen that we can't explain. So, yes, begin at the beginning, and I'm ready when you are. Benjamin the Dream Wizard wants to help you pierce the veil of night and shine the light of understanding upon the mystery of dreams. Every episode of his Dreamscapes program features real dreamers gifted with rare insight into their nocturnal visions. New Dreamscapes episodes appear every week on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and other video hosting platforms, as well as free audiobooks highlighting the psychological principles which inform our dream experience and much, much more. To join the wizard as a guest, reach out across more than a dozen social media platforms and through the contact page at benjaminthedreamwizard.com, where you will also find the wizard's growing catalog of historical dream literature, available on Amazon, featuring the wisdom and wonder of exploration into the world of dreams over the past 2,000 years. That's Benjamin the Dream Wizard on YouTube and at benjaminthedreamwizard.com.
So Dream starts, I'm sitting in a movie theater that is nearby where I live. It's about a 15-20 minute drive. And so theater's dark, but there's nothing playing. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, movie's over, need to drive home. I've had a lot of mundane dreams in my life before, so this wasn't too much new at the beginning. Go out, get in car, nondescript car. I don't know if it was the car I normally drive or not, but it was just a car. So I get in the car and start driving back home. At first, there's a bunch of cars on the road, and so it's like, okay, there's a bunch of cars on the road, whatever. And so I go to take the back road home just because I don't like driving with lots of cars. So I go to take the back road. I almost never take the back road home, so I didn't think too much about it at the time, but I was like, okay, I'm taking the back road home. I'm driving. And then all of a sudden there's a deer in front of the car, and the car slams into it. And so I've been in a lot of vehicles that have hit deer before, and I've been in a lot of like car accidents. So I have a very detailed set of memories about what that feels like.
Oh yeah.
So normally if something like that happens, I will wake up because it's like, oh, that's a feeling that, I know that feeling, and that's a feeling that says you need to wake up right now or pay attention to whatever's going on. But I didn't this time. And in fact, so the car hits the deer, it just kind of vanishes. Like I feel like I blinked and I missed it. And then the deer was just gone. But I was, in the dream, I was panicking because I was like, I've hit a deer in a vehicle before. I know that that's a bad thing, and I need to like stop and pull over or whatever. But before I can like think and regain control of think consciously about what I need to do, another deer hits the car. And so then I get, that's not good. And so I'm just spiraling at that point, and then it just hits deer after deer after deer after deer, and I think it was like 7 or 8 of them before my brain just finally had the response. It's like, it doesn't matter what you do, you just need to not be here. So I went to the other side of the road. It was a back road, so there wasn't really a lane per se, but it was like I got in the other lane, and then there was just like this massive 16-wheeler heading towards me, and the next deer I was going to hit then slams into the side of the car that I'm driving. And at that point, like, I don't like cars in the first place, so this is like a hyper stressful situation for me. So at that point, I just like I have a complete mental breakdown, and I just completely let go of the wheel. I just put my hands over my face, and I just wait. I'm just like, please make it stop. Just make it stop. And I'm just waiting for that next impact. And then after, a couple of minutes or so, the impact doesn't come. So I slowly just take my hands off my face, and I look up, and the car is on the side of the road. I'm not driving anymore. I'm in the passenger seat. Someone else is holding the wheel. I don't know who they are. It's just like a feminine silhouette. And so I just go back to just like putting my hands over my face and just trying to calm down for a while. And then eventually, once I felt I was like reasonably calm, that's when I woke up.
Okay. Trying to catch up here.
It's okay. Sorry, I talk fast sometimes.
No, that's okay. And honestly, I don't want guests to regulate themselves in any possible way. I mean, if someone's talking really, really fast and I just can't possibly keep up, I'm going to say, okay, maybe a little slower. But that was fine. You're just telling the story. You're into it. You're seeing it. I can kind of tell when people are reading from paper and when they're kind of back in it. And actually, you're closer to back in it as you're telling it, which is brilliant. That's where that's the dual purpose of the deep dive. I'm getting you back into it so I can see through your eyes. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to try and go quickly here. And I don't know if anyone can see. It's going to darken my screen or whatever. This isn't one entire page full of the story. I try to put everything on its own line if I possibly can, all the different elements. There's different ways to do these. I mean, if you go back 100 years, you got the Jungian and Freudian analyses. You've got people more recently like Paul, what is his name? Domhoff. Bill Domhoff, William Domhoff, I think is his name. Anyway, I've probably got that wrong, but one of my other ABC episodes, long story short, he got into the recording dreams in a dream bank. You can actually go to like dreambank.net, I think, something like that. Don't quote me. And what he does is he starts counting the appearance of things. So you have in your dream one car, 7 or 8 deer. You've got one 16-wheeler. You've got one road. We've got one side of the road in a way. We've got changing lanes. We've got a lot of discrete instances, and he starts adding those up and calculating them in terms of how common are these things.
Right.
And so I hope someday in the future to be able to do something similar to that, saying, okay, by way of creating a new system in a way, like if you've got this kind of enumerated instances, and those tend to mean certain things to certain people, and they all kind of line up. Now we can actually start building a real dream dictionary that might be more useful than the old ones.
A little more scientifically grounded.
A little more scientifically grounded, which is funny. Psychology is definitely that art and science type of thing. Like there's a science to this, and I've got that as a foundation. And now we're freehand watercoloring. Because
there's a difference. There's a difference between a neurobiologist and a psychologist for a reason.
Neurobiologists can tell you what area of the brain is active. I can hopefully tell you why. Hopefully. Right? Very interesting too. We used to because of functional MRIs, we used to think people only had dreams during REM sleep. Now we have shown that there is brain activity all night long, and it peaks and troughs, in different ways. And that if you awaken people outside of REM sleep, they will often, we've known this for a couple hundred years at least, they will often report they were in the middle of a dream. I personally think that means we dream constantly from the moment we fall asleep to the moment we wake up. We do not remember most of it because it's below that awakening threshold where we can form a memory of having had thoughts in our sleep.
Yeah, different levels of brain activity accessing different things. So different motor functions are available at different times. So and you're still dreaming, but you're dreaming in different ways at different levels.
Yeah, well, I liken it to I love my analogy. So, the lungs breathe, the heart beats, and the brain thinks. It's what it does. It never really stops unless it's damaged or you're dead. From the moment the brain is there, it just shooting electrical signals everywhere. So, and then you get people like me. It's like I very often remember that I had a dream, no details whatsoever. I use a famous example. I was standing outside the rear, passenger door of a vehicle. That kind of a vague impression is all I get. So anyway, this is about you, not me. I can talk. This is why I try and ask people to set aside 2 hours. I ramble, and I think it makes an interesting conversation, but I repeat myself a lot.
Okay.
So I've already got some ideas. Let's put this here. I forgot to write down a timestamp, question mark. Okay. So it's very interesting. Everything is very interesting, but it starts in a movie theater and the movie has ended. So I would like to do a classic deep dive. I don't think we have time for it. I'm going to be a little more suggestive as we go through it, but we're going to go through it chronologically. To me, the idea of the movie theater suggests why. Okay, so the question is, why would you start this segment of a dream with that impression? The first thing that comes to my mind with a movie theater is the idea of you're being shown a fantasy, a fiction. Does that comport with kind of how you think of movies in general? You know, you've been there for entertainment, or you've been there to, hear a story you weren't watching a documentary in the theater, right? It was a movie.
No, yeah. Well, normally, I watch movies to be entertained, but I'm very selective about the movies I watch. Typically, I'll only watch them if I've heard good things about them. Just because, like, sitting down to watch a movie is an investment of time, in a way. I like to have my time, so if someone asks me to go to the movies, my brain asks two questions. One, who's the person we're with, and two, what movie are we going to see? Because you spend time with the people before and after the movie, but then there's the movie itself. So you don't want to go see a bad movie, or if they want to see a bad movie, you can at least try to talk them into seeing a good movie.
Yeah. Well, tell me if this particular phrasing resonates with you. When a movie ends, you come back to reality. Is there a concept in there that rings?
Yeah. Part of the problem is, I work on fantasy novels and I do a lot of my own writing. Mm-hmm. So sometimes when I'm watching movies, I don't necessarily watch them to be engrossed in them. Sometimes I'm watching them with the purpose of studying them and learning from them. So,
did you have a sense in the dream at that moment of why you had been there? What was the takeaway? The movie had just ended.
Not really. There are some movies that I've gone and seen, and then after they're over, they just immediately leave my thoughts. It doesn't happen very often, but it was more of I'm here. I was here to see a movie. Now movie is over. Done here.
Time
moving
to go
on
home.
To.
And you were alone. You were not with anyone. This was...
Yeah, I was alone. I don't remember anybody else being in the movie theater.
I think if you did remember, even if it was just vague, yes, I was with other people. I don't know who they were. That would suggest a different setting. This is you alone, entertained maybe, or analyzing. What I'm looking at is there's a metaphor to coming out of a movie theater. And that's why I phrased it as a coming back to reality type of thing. It's like you've been entertaining something... Right. Not real, and now you're going back to the real, where there's real problems or more pressing concerns. There's something in there. Is it resonating with something? Would you say it a different way? That's maybe the best I can express it.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. I have a couple of projects that are I said, I've been working on fantasy novels for a while now, but I haven't seriously entertained the idea of writing one for the sake of publishing, because I haven't really thought about them being solid enough. Just the writing quality is not as good.
Gotcha.
And there's one that I've recently started redoing. It was one where it was 5 or so years ago, and when I wrote it, I did it from start to end, and I read back over it, and I was like, I like this story, but it's not good enough. The prose isn't good enough, the structure's not good enough. I need to take some time to actually work on it and work on making that side of it good. And recently I did have the experience when I rewrote the first chapter of it, where I compared it to the original chapter, and it was just night and day. It was so much better. I was I was gonna cry. I was holy shit, I could legitimately do this. I could actually do this. All of these, years that I've spent getting better at it.
When did the dream happen in relation to that experience?
It was a Let me double check, because I can actually pull up a number here. One sec. Okay, so that was... oh my god, that was only like 4 days ago? Holy crap.
The dream itself was about 4 days ago?
Yeah, the dream itself was about 4 days ago, and I want to say the new writing experience was like a week, maybe 2 weeks ago.
Okay. The only reason I would focus on that is, so there's all kinds of ways to get to free association. And one is to start talking about something, and then the brain starts following channels that are connected. And where we got to from leaving a movie theater was, I'm working on a fantasy novel. It just kind of flowed into it. So that doesn't mean that is necessarily our only answer, but there's something connected to that experience, the way you're understanding it, the way it might relate to the way it might belong to a higher order category of experiences that you're trying to process through this dream. So, eventually at some point I always try to remember to get around to when did the dream happen and what was going on in your life at that time. So there's something about you likely processing that experience of looking at your own work in an improved form, and the possible inspiration that gave you to say, this looks more possible. And then you go, so then you're coming out of in the dream, you're coming out of a movie theater, which represents to you, a time investment, a social activity you usually do with friends. This is alone. So you're alone in the movie theater. The movie has ended. The dream is not there to show you a movie. It's to say, imagine you're coming back from a movie. You're going home from this fantasy experience, from a fictional experience. I was looking at it, the idea of fiction or theory versus real or practical. There's something in that connection of like, we have ideas. Oh, I wonder if that's possible. And then we start looking at how possible it is. Is it possible for me? How would I even do that? Yeah, that kind of thing. So there's some kind of thought experiment going on here where you're like, okay, in the context of returning from Fantasyland in a way where you've put the real world on hold. Now you got to look at the real world. You got to look at something maybe more realistically, objectively. Is that kind of resonating as a bit of a theme for that opening idea?
Well, I did actually consider taking some time off to actually work on said novel, so that makes sense. I love my job, so I haven't really considered taking time off very much ever, unless I'm like insanely just overworked or something like that.
Yeah.
So this, for this job, there have been other jobs that I did not like that I did take time off because it was like, oh, I really just don't want to work this job. But
and even jobs you love can be extremely stressful, and sometimes you just need a break. So.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, even if you love it, it's like, oh, it takes so much energy, that kind of a thing. Fair enough. So, and don't latch on to anything, and don't think I'm necessarily correct, but I'm throwing out these ideas. So something's...
Yeah, we're just thinking about it.
We're looking at a giant block of marble and clay, and we're like starting to chip off little pieces, and like, does it look like anything yet? Maybe not yet. And eventually, hopefully, Michelangelo's David, if I may humbly say so myself. So you're thinking to yourself, well, the movie's over, time to drive home. So there's something about, you're not going somewhere else. You're going home. You're going, whatever home means to you. It's definitely, there's all kinds of different ideas. Home is where the heart is, the classic things like that. It's also, home is where we keep our stuff. Home is where our relatives, our closest family live, maybe. Home is where we feel safe. Home is our space. When you think of home and returning home from an excursion of any kind, even for entertainment, does anything come to mind?
Means I don't have to drive anymore.
Yeah, and you don't like driving in general. Driving's a purely unenjoyable utilitarian practice. Get me from point A to point B. Yeah,
I do what I have to. I would really rather not. Because the only reason I would go drive to a movie theater is because there's not one nearby.
Sorry, I had to scare the cat away again. Home is not driving. Yeah. So well, for sure. That's kind of where you went immediately with it. That means the trip is over. I've arrived. I don't like travel either. I do not like leaving my house. I was a little late today because I had to walk to the end of the block. The roads are literally one big sheet of ice. Baby steps, very slow, pitter patter, pitter patter.
Actually, I don't mind travel that much. It's driving specifically.
Fair enough.
So So like planes, boats, great, love them. Cars.
Yeah. So you put yourself into the least favorite mode of travel to get home.
Yes.
There's something in there. Yeah, you didn't walk. You didn't jump on an airplane. You are driving home from the movie theater. So you're taking a rather unenjoyable utilitarian mode to return from a theoretical place to a more real place, to the more practical world, to the problems of reality in a way. There's something in there.
Maybe. I mean, realistically, I don't know. I because I love my job, and I'm an overachiever naturally. I have a bad tendency of overworking myself and doing like work away from work and things like that.
Gotcha.
So like to give a perspective, it's like, okay, so I have work. I sometimes do stuff outside of work, but I'm also writing my own statistics textbook. Partially because I want to, partially because there's only one stats textbook I've ever read that I would actually recommend to anybody. The Manga Guide to Stats, if ever you need it. And I run games for my friends on the weekend with like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff, and I try to do other stuff. Like I feel like I do too much sometimes.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And I don't set enough time to decompress. Recently I started working like more time overall, like during the year. So like I don't have as much time as I normally have to do these things, which is part of the reason why I considered, specifically taking time off to do this sort of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I think that all relates too. I'm trying to figure out where to go with it without trying to make a few pronouncements, as few firm suggestions as possible. Trying to make, so try to be careful how I phrase things. I say it as best I can sometimes. Okay. But okay, so we got two things that happen next. We focused a lot on the getting out of the theater and what it means and getting into your car to go home. Mm-hmm. It's a nondescript car too. It wasn't your actual car. That's interesting too. There's something about that this is an unusual mode of conveyance. It is not literally your car. You are heading to your house from a local movie theater. You've set it all in a very realistic setting. This is not an unknown town in a foreign country on the moon. It's very, very, like, you don't have to deviate much from the actual to get the message of what this is saying, that it very much relates to what you are experiencing and what you have experienced as a metaphor for something similar you're going through now. So, okay, I said two things. First, you realize you're hitting traffic and you just don't like to be around a bunch of other cars. It feels threatening because someone else is going to be an idiot and get you hurt, or it's frustrating to be blocked in your progress, too much traffic. How would you describe it?
I like to think of myself as patient, so I'm usually not that bothered by being behind people. Mm-hmm. Although that can be annoying, but usually only if it's like an absurd extreme. But it's more of someone's going to do something stupid, and it's like you can't control other people. That's just an inevitability that someone makes a bad decision or they have a bad reaction to something, and that negatively impacts other people. And like there's nothing you can do about that. That's just a reality. Yeah. The only way to like not be a part of that is to completely remove yourself from the situation. But that's not necessarily what you always want to do, because even if you're in a bad spot and you're being negatively impacted by someone, that doesn't mean you can't do anything about it. It just means that you're not necessarily where you want to be.
Yeah, for sure. So in this estimation of the dream, you're not looking at gridlock. That's not what causes you to say, I can't make progress without taking another path. It's more of, there's just too many other people. I'm not going to take the risk. I don't want to deal with the problem.
Yeah, I don't want to deal with all that.
Okay, so there's more of a distaste for the situation rather than a practical blockage. Like physically, right. We're at a dead standstill on the freeway, know where I can go. This is more like just a discomfort. Yeah. With the idea of how many people were there. So you decide to take a back road, and this is a back road you're familiar with. It exists in real life?
Yes, it is a real road.
Okay. roads. And these back roads take you through the country where deer would be likely, or is this deer coming out between houses in the suburbs?
Well, it's through the country, so like there's a possibility for deer, but I can't in living memory remember much deer ever being there. Like I may have seen one or two, but I don't remember them being many.
And you have multiple deer accidents because you've lived in the country before?
Yes.
And I've had some close calls. I actually hit one once, but luckily I hit the brakes. I hit him at about 15 miles an hour. He staggered and got up and ran across the road, and that was the only time I hit a deer. Very fortunate, no damage to me or the deer as far as I could tell. He probably got a few bumps and bruises, but didn't cave in my hood and go through the windshield.
They always get up and walk away afterwards unless they're dead.
Right? Yeah, even if they got a broken leg, they get up and get the hell out of there because they're like, it's a predator. I'm going to die. They get that. You got to move, baby girl. She is trying to walk on my keyboard. Go. I love you. I love you. Go. I just can't today. There's no time. Okay, so any landmarks you could identify right before or the moment of you hit the first deer? Were you at a particular place on that real life journey?
I remember there's a point where that dirt road splits and you can get back on the main road, or you can keep going kind of, in the country road, or go back. I remember driving past that and I didn't get back on the main road just because I didn't want to get back into like traffic.
Okay.
And then shortly after that was when that happened.
Yeah. There's definitely something going on here of choosing your path away from a certain kind of problem, choosing to brave a different kind of problem, showing yourself at that moment. I knew there was something that happened right before that deer. Well, I suspected, I know, right. But that there was some, and that was the moment you could have chosen to go, well, I could put myself back on the main roads. I could go back to what's familiar. I could go back to what's paved for me. I could deal with that kind of traffic versus this different kind of risk. And you decided to stay on that road and immediately showed yourself, well, here's the consequences. You're going to hit a deer. And you did. And like, whoa, instant panic in the dream. And you said, I don't know if it came back around, but that deer, your response was immediately to blink, or for some reason, the deer bounced off the front. No serious damage, and then it disappeared?
I didn't see where the deer went. It hit there was the impact, and I blinked when it impacted the vehicle, and then by the time my eyes opened again, it was gone.
Gotcha. Interesting. So you showed, and any damage to you, damage to the vehicle as far as you could tell?
The vehicle was still moving. It was weird because I've been in a vehicle that's hit a deer in a nature similar to this before. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why, I was more panicked than I would have been if I had hit a deer in real life.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So
this deer you're confronting is more scary than real deer. That makes perfect sense to me. If you kind of get what I'm saying.
Well, yeah. Well, I think it was because it felt like it just materialized in front of me. I've said when I've hit a deer before, it's they run and jump out in front of you from where you can't see, because that happens sometimes. But it was unrealistically fast. It just appeared.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. And that's where I'm getting to with this idea is that there's a difference between a problem you can see coming that you can't avoid, and then there's problems that are probably there, but you can't predict when they're going to strike or how hard. Right. And they're going to look like they come out of nowhere, even if you were expecting them, and you probably were. You're like, oh shit, this is deer country, This is bat country. So there's something about that, and the sudden, unexpected, you're expecting a problem, but you never know when it's going to hit. There's a level of tension, anxiety that comes with that. Is like the moment in a movie before a jump scare. The volume drops, go ahead.
I think probably that was why I was surprised, was because I wasn't expecting it. There's not usually deer like that on that road, and I didn't really see it much at all. The instant before I hit it was the only time I saw it.
Gotcha. Okay, and there was no panic anxiety going into it of I better get ready. But that I think that kind of reinforces a little bit with where I was going with it. Is like you've chosen a path where your brain knows, okay, country, deer are a problem. But you weren't even really thinking about that. But immediately you show yourself, look at this negative thing you've experienced before. Right. It's going to come out of nowhere, or the possibility that unforeseen, maybe unforeseeable problems, because you can't really anticipate at what point on the country road a deer is going to pop out. It's unless you got the deer crossing sign, it's like they always cross there. Fair enough. You slow way down. Yeah. You're just trying to get home. It's just, so there's something about like your brain's crystallized this idea of one of the worst experiences in your life. Not the worst, not the most traumatic thing ever, but bad enough, like something you don't want to have happen again. And it's happened more than once. And now it's saying, okay, whatever this concept you're exploring, it's like the risk of deer. And not only that, you're going to hit one out of nowhere, and you're going to react. You're going to have this category of problem that's going to cause even more distress than the problem you're comparing it to. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Just to try and kind of nail that down a little bit. And not only that, it's going to keep happening because you've committed to a path. You didn't stop and turn around and go back to the main road. You're showing yourself, I'm on this path now, and the deer keep coming. Another 7 or 8 deer. Any difference in the experience with those? Are you starting to see them coming, but you can't stop?
Yeah. I saw the last one. I remember seeing the last one, but I remember just the panic got worse because it was like, okay, I feel like this is going to happen again, but I don't know where they're coming from. Like, I don't know why this is happening, but it keeps happening. And so, brain's just like, all right, this is going to continue if you don't do something. But I was so panicked, I didn't know what to do.
Yeah, and panic rising. Okay, so you've got, you're showing yourself, in my estimation, what I think I'm seeing, you're showing yourself enough repetitions of a particular kind of problem that finally you kind of get it enough to say, okay, between that last one where you've figured out the pattern and the next one, you're like, oh, I'm going to hit, now I kind of see it coming. Now that's you've had a paradigm shift in your head, a perspective change. And it's that moment when you've been able to finally understand the pattern that you say, I need to change lanes. Now I need to take a different approach to this problem. And what it did was it put you in the path of an oncoming semi. You went from bad to worse.
and then the deer hit me in the side anyway.
Yeah, and then which side?
It was the right side because I got over in the left lane and then the deer hit me on the right side.
So you were, and we're talking,
just like the right side of a dirt road, yeah.
Well,
because I definitely didn't see the semi until I switched lanes.
Yeah, and this is why partly why I ask questions. So it's a dirt road, and they're usually narrow. I mean, if you're gonna pull over to let another car pass, but usually you're right in the dead center because it's kind of one lane.
Usually,
So you were dead center this whole time down this country road, or on the right hand side, like driving in a city streets.
Well, I was towards the right side of the dirt road. I tend to stick closer to the right because it's
that's probably
traffic rules.
That's probably what I do. Yeah, it just feels more natural. Yeah. And then you actually you don't exactly change lanes, but you drift over to the other side, which is very unnatural for you and me both. It's like this doesn't feel as good, but it's a change. You're changing lanes is a fair enough way to say it. Hugging the left instead of the right, and then that's when you see there's a semi coming. And that's when a deer who might have been in your path, he just decides to hit you anyway. I mean, now the problem is coming to find you. You've moved. You found the pattern. Yes. You've moved. And now this one, it comes and finds you anyway. So you've got a dual thing. Changing something didn't solve the problem. It actually put you at risk of another problem. And the same problems are still finding you on this path. I don't know if this is, I might want to stop there for just a minute and kind of let you process that and decide if you have something to say.
Well, my brain is just like, how do I put this? This is going to sound weird.
Go ahead.
I really value my vacation time. Like days I don't have to work are very valuable to me. And so when I work more, I have fewer of them.
Yeah.
I have more flexible choices of when I can take them, but there are less of them. And so I haven't really been thinking about what that like lack of vacation time is gonna be like. It's like, okay, so what days am I taking this? When is a good time to take this? And especially during this like previous winter where there was an extra like 3 or 4 weeks I don't normally work that I was working on stuff. That was very stressful in a way I don't know how to articulate properly, because like I was still doing my job and I still loved it and I still liked what I was doing, but it was just the idea of like not having that time is very different. And then on the time I did have off, it was not pleasant. I was very much looking forward to that small span of time where it's like, okay, so now it's dropped from like 8 weeks to 3 weeks, and it's like, okay, so I'm just gonna relax and not worry and be stress-free during those 3 weeks. And like that was not even close to what happened.
Gotcha.
So it was like, oh, I'm gonna, be home for the holidays and, maybe spend some time with friends and family. And then it was like everybody else's everything just immediately started falling apart.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm just there and I'm like, okay, well, my options now are just leave everyone alone and just like try not to be a part of any of that.
This cat right here, she's puking on my bed. She's puking on the bed right now. Oh my God! So not to interrupt you, I was like, I'm okay. Hearing it. Like, oh God, I'll go clean it up later. Whatever, wash the blanket. Right. That's okay. Yeah. No, so I am paying attention to your problem. Sorry. So you were anticipating a rather relaxing vacation time that you highly value, and suddenly a bunch of responsibilities popped up that you just couldn't ignore. I mean, it was people important to you, and now you're helping them deal with their problems.
Well, I don't know if I would call it responsibilities necessarily, because like it's not my job to take care of those people, if that makes sense. But I don't know. I feel like I should at least try to help.
Yeah.
Because if you try to help and then you can't, well then you can throw up your hands and say, well, yeah, well I tried, I did my best. The fact that I care is not just a mental thing; it is a physical thing as well. That's important.
No, for sure. Yeah, and there are self-selected responsibilities.
Yeah.
I could very easily just stop feeding my animals and they could all die. But I care. I care not to have that happen. Yeah. So this is, and pets, I could give them all away too. And we're trying to rehome some cats. But the idea of I'm not able to. Like, what's the point of me having a bunch of free time if I spend the whole amount of that free time miserable that I'm not doing what I could to help someone and that they are suffering? That's a big problem to me. And I think so when I say, you don't have the kind of parent-child responsibility where you made a person and now you need to make sure they're healthy. These are grown-ass adults or relatives, and they could maybe take care of their own thing, but that doesn't sit well with you, doing nothing to help other people. Yeah. Fair enough. And that kind of came up of just me starting to summarize some of these things. This is all very much related to trying to work your way through. This is my broad strokes estimation. Trying to choose a path. Trying to work your way through problem solving, navigation. Travel stuff is always metaphorically connected, in my estimation, to navigating a path between where you're at now and where you want to be. There's something to that, and some dreams maybe not so much, but this one very much looks like a problem solving potential future behavior in a way. Like, what if I try this? What if I try that? What is this going to look like? How am I going to feel about it? Broad strokes. We're getting there too, and we're actually a little over your time. How much time do you got left? 5-10.
Sorry, someone at the door. I had to mute myself for a second.
Fair enough. I hope you were able to hear me. Were you at your AirPods or?
I had the headphones on, so
gotcha.
I could hear you, but my train of thought.
Well, speaking of which, I was asking, was that your wake up call, so to speak? Like you're about out of time?
Yeah, I'm running low on time. So
gotcha. Well, I'm trying to go as fast as I can. I usually take a lot longer getting through these things. Well, at some point you decide moving forward is no longer a good idea, and you pull over, or you just suddenly find yourself you've been involuntarily pulled over?
I found myself by the side of the road. I did not pull over yet.
Because there was a moment where you had just been hit by the deer, the semi's coming, you just cover your eyes and take your hands off the wheel, and suddenly you've given up complete control, anticipating nothing you can do is going to make anything better, and suddenly you're safe. Suddenly you have stopped forward progress along this path.
Yeah.
Choosing to surrender control was a way of doing that as well. If I stop acting, if I stop driving, literally driving myself forward along this path, I could just stop. And that's the moment then you realize, wait a minute, now I'm a passenger. And there's this female feminine silhouette in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
And then you put your hands over your face again to calm down. And as the feeling dissipated, that's when you woke up.
Yes.
Gotcha. So there was an act of surrendering control while you were moving forward on the self-selected path. That act not only stopped the forward progress and moved the car over to the side, but it put the
car was in a different place. Like, it wasn't pulled over exactly where it was. It was further down the road.
Fair enough. So you got past the problem.
Yeah.
In some ways by just surrendering to it. Whatever happens. I'm not even going to watch. I can't watch. It's overwhelming to the point where I can't even watch what happens to myself. And then you're past it, but you're pulled over. So something took over. Something else drove you past that, because you're showing yourself, I don't know how I got through it, but I was a passenger during that experience. Right. And now I'm realizing I was a passenger, and whatever was moving me forward. And I look at the idea of showing yourself, it was not a masculine presence. It was not a rabbit. It was, speaking of which, I love the whole, we haven't even mentioned the VTuber thing. I've never done that before. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
It was specifically a feminine presence. So if we look at, and I love going to the Jungian thing, and I think it's absolutely true. It goes way, way before Jung. Jung just looked at the yin yang. We all have yin and yang within us. We have our masculine and feminine side. He called it the animus and the anima. And I think if this resonates with you, you're conceptualizing there's something about a broadly feminine approach, putting that in control of the driving process got you through it, or you assumed if you got through it, the driver had to be a feminine silhouette. And it's not a specific person. It's not your mother necessarily. It's not your sister. It's an idea of the non-specific feminine. There's something about that feminine energy that had a positive influence on keeping you safe, resolving the problem in a manner that you don't really understand. You didn't see what happened and you don't know what happened. You didn't tell yourself you understood it. What do you think about all those? I threw a lot of words at you.
Well, my brain is thinking, because since then I've actually I've tried to do some different things to relax, and I was kind of trying to do that at the time when I had the dream, was relax and not overstress it, because clearly there are real life stressors. You don't need to add extra ones.
That's true.
And just just take a step back and just relax and make a conscious effort to sort of set aside that time that I've had less of recently. And I don't remember what day it was this week, but I was listening to I want to say it was Tao philosophy, and there was just this very peaceful guy reading it with like calming nature sounds in the background.
Okay.
And I was driving at the time. I was driving on my commute to work in the sun, and I just remember being a lot more relaxed and just present. I don't know how to say this. I'm very sensitive to touch, so when I'm riding in a vehicle, I can, if there's a part that's moving away it's not supposed to, I can almost not necessarily know exactly what it is, but have a feeling of what direction it's in.
Gotcha.
And so the car was running just fine, and we're going down the road, and it's a very tranquil experience that just kind of stuck out to me in my mind. So maybe it's just the idea of like, because one of the things I do is, so with anxiety, one of the conscious thoughts I have that helps me deal with it is, okay, is this anxiety going to help me do what it is I need to do next? And typically the answer is no, and like consciously I can recognize that, and that can help me like relax physically.
Yeah.
But there's a big difference between consciously processing your emotions and subconsciously processing your emotions, and you need to approach them differently. And I've been trying to work better on that, but it's hard because what do you even do? What do you even do to make that happen, you know? So that's been something.
For sure. Yeah, no, I think that's all very powerful. And it took us kind of analyzing the dream to get to that you've been lately trying to de-stress a little bit, try and find your zen, try and ride it out a little bit better. And I think there is, broadly speaking, yin yang, masculine energy is very action, dynamic. Feminine energy is very calm, zen, tranquil, pond. There's two, and neither one is superior. A lot of people think of yin yang, masculine, feminine. Yeah. There is times when you want the soft, especially in a pillow. There's times when you want the hard in a hammer. Different tools for different jobs, and they're both extremely valuable and supreme in their bailiwick, in their area. I can't think of a better word. No one knows what a bailiwick is, but anyway, I read too many. I got a vocabulary I can't use half of sometimes. So broad strokes, trying to bring it all together and tell yourself a story. You're like, so rather than movies being fantasy to reality necessarily, I think, as you said in the beginning, it's more like vacation time. Okay, vacation's over. Now I got to do something practical. Now I got problems to solve. I got to get home. I got to go wherever home is. There's traffic. I can make a choice and not deal with this many people. There's something unappetizing, something about that path that makes it less appealing to you. Like, I just don't want to deal with that. But then you find you pick the other path and there's all kinds of problems anyway. Oh, whoa, worse problems. They come at you long enough to start seeing a pattern. You try to change your approach and you put yourself squarely in the path of a huge problem that you're like, why would there even be a semi in this road? This is a dirt road. Semis don't go down there. We're like, here's like the worst thing you'd imagine, head-on collision with a semi. And you still haven't saved yourself from the problems, but you surrender. You actually close your eyes and Jesus, take the wheel. And whatever gets you through this overwhelming, stressful experience has a very feminine energy to it. And you find out, if I just let go a little bit and let the feminine energy drive the car, propel me forward, I can just be as if I'm on the side of the road, take a deep breath, calm down, let it go, and then you wake up. When I put it all together a little bit like that, does that generate some thoughts?
There is actually, funnily enough, there is a project I'm working on at work. It's one of the newer things. It's one of the reasons why I'm working more days. And it is not like I'm not working with students on it. I'm building a program that will eventually I'll be working with students for, but I'm spending a lot of time kind of by myself working on it, setting stuff up. I do have someone who works on it with me, but they don't. Like, they have their side, I have my side.
Gotcha.
And I have a lot on my plate on that project, but it's self-paced. But I'm also trying not to like do large swaths of it outside of work, because I could very easily do that. But that's not sustainable. That's going to make me worse at all the things that I normally do, and so I can't do that. That's not a good long-term solution. I need to actually take time off, relax, and just save that efficiency for when I'm actually doing it. Because that's going to make me better on both fronts.
This very much does, now that we've kind of brought it all together, look like a dream of you looking at the sustainability of your chosen path and all the problems you're encountering and how overwhelming it is. And you're like, I need more of the Zen calm. I need more time away. A lot of people look at self-care as indulgent, but in some ways it's like it's literally not spinning too many plates. At a point you just can't balance them all, and the entire plate spinning operation crashes because you added one too many plates. There's a very practical reason to not overwhelm yourself with more than you can think about and physically accomplish. So I use another analogy too, where it's like if someone is on the ground and you want to help them up, you cannot be about to tip over, balancing on the tippy toes of one leg, and then reach out and help them to their feet. They're going to pull you over. You must be in a strong, stable stance to reach a hand out and help others. And that means you got to assume that stance on purpose. You got to put yourself in a good position mentally, emotionally, physically, your needs met. And then you can reach out and take on additional responsibility. You do too much, you fall apart. And when you burn out, who's the guy that's going to help when they have a problem?
Exactly.
Does that all kind of tie it all together and seem to fit with the dream?
It does, and it makes sense to me. That does make a lot of sense. Although speaking of spinning plates, I do have to be going.
You got to go, and we're gonna wrap it up. Yes, I wanted to do that and bring it all together for you. I'm just gonna say this is the end. Thank you to Math Dad Wizard from Middle of Nowhere, USA, a friend on another Discord server. And you all can reach out to me. I have a contact page at benjaminthedreamwizard.com. 15, hopefully 16 works of historical dream literature you can find right there. benjaminthedreamwizard.com. Just going to keep saying that. And I'm just going to say, Math Dad, fellow wizard, it was good talking to you.
It was good talking to you too. Y'all check out the new book.
Right on. Everybody out there, thanks for watching.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.